I wanted a place for people to receive authentic guidance and practical ways to awaken. Thought-provoking, paradigm-shifting, and empowering. This is about expanding our human consciousness to create a wave of new possibilities. I'm Dr. Theresa Bullard, and this is Quantum Minds TV. Welcome back to Quantum Minds TV, where we take a deep dive into various perspectives on what it's going to take to create a shift in human consciousness. In this episode, we're continuing the conversation with Nassim Haramein, founder of the Resonance Science Foundation and Taurus Tech, among many other notable achievements. I love that concept of being able to run the world on the energy of creation itself, or on the energy of the divine. You know, it's like such a pure energy, and it gives and it gives and it gives and it gives, rather than something that gets depleted or, runs on entropy and breaks down. Right. This is something that can keep on giving unless you purposely try to break it down. Now, my question for you is, so as we...
Well, never mind that when it runs, it makes things that are living around it run better too.
It's life enhancing, right?
It's life enhancing.
Whereas all of our, EMFs that we're surrounded by right now kind of are a little bit life deteriorating. Yeah. This is life enhancing because it creates that coherent field. Now, right. What you showed us in that video was these small crystals, and they put out microamps worth of energy, scalar energy, if I'm correct. So right. It's not like electrical charge. It's not an electromagnetic effect, if that's right. It's a different type of wave of energy, the scalar wave. Can we maybe just briefly describe what that difference is?
Right. So it can be converted to conventional electromagnetic fields. That's how this device to measure it worked, right? It converted the scalar energy into something that could be measured with the conventional meter. But you can see that, so a little bit of a history. So when Maxwell wrote his equations, he wrote his equation with the ether, right, for the electromagnetic field. And the equations were written like a fluid flowing, around islands that were like, the islands were like particles. And how the fluid flow around it, and how the particles reacted was basically describing the electromagnetic fields of particle interaction, right? And it worked. But it was written in a really complex way. And so, but it outputted 20 equations, of which we only use 4. Okay? So what happened is that this great physicist, actually, Heaviside, which was an autodidact like me, actually was the guy that took Maxwell's equation and simplified them so they could be usable. And when he did so, he linearized the equation into vector calculus, and then, in somewhat arbitrary way, where the rest of the equation, the 16 other equations, were kind of canceled out. Remember that when we were talking about how we tend to like simplify things so that it's easier? Yeah. Well, they did that. And they kept only the 4, and so you only have a transverse transmission of electromagnetic field, and the longitudinal part is canceled out. The longitudinal part is the scalar part that we're talking about.
So for people who don't know transverse versus longitudinal, my understanding, when you have like light or an electromagnetic wave, you have the electrical part kind of going like a sine wave one way, and the magnetic part going like a sine wave perpendicular to that. And those are the transverse fields, whereas longitudinal is more like pressure waves going through
Exactly.
a medium, almost like sound, like a sound wave is kind of a
Exactly.
longitudinal wave.
And exactly, that's very good. And basically, you basically took the vortex out. So basically, an electromagnetic wave is a vortex in the structure of the Planck field, in the structure of the Planck plasma or the ether. But what you've done is you've made it a two-dimensional up and down wave on an oscilloscope. You see?
Okay. Big difference. Big difference.
Yeah, big difference. Exactly. One component includes angular momentum, rotation. To be more precise, to be very precise, now I'm giving keys. One component includes circulation. Circulation is precise, like formalism in physics. So there's circulation of the flow of the ether is what we call the electromagnetic field. And this is what Maxwell visualized and wrote in his equation, but the circulation was removed, basically. Wow. And so when you put it back in, well, if you don't have it, you're not gonna get, if you don't have it, you won't even be able to measure anything new about these crystals. You're gonna say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not measuring any energy. I'm not measuring anything, right? Until you convert it into the transverse component so that our device can detect it because they've been built to measure transverse, then you don't see it, right?
Right. So even when you do convert it, so that there's scalar energy coming out, and then we can convert that into the transverse and electromagnetic. And when you do convert it, you get microamps, right? So one crystal is putting out small amount of energy and current, but it can have large physical effects. So what do you feel needs to happen? Like how many of these crystals, for example, would maybe be needed to charge our Tesla car instead of having to plug into the grid?
Well, that's the thing. What you're seeing is milliamps, but it's milliamp because it's amplified through the technology we put. The crystal is not even putting out milliamps, right? So it's because the way we've written amps as well, the way we write, like all of our way we're thinking.
The whole scientific and technological paradigm of today needs to be rethought, basically.
Right, basically, but what you can think of is that it's not necessarily the quantity of crystals. Okay. It's the quality of the coherent field that you're producing. So the exploration is how can I increase the coherency? How can I make this vortex in space more coherent? And there's definitely a clear path of engineering to it from the papers I'm about to publish. But already, other engineers and so on could think about it. But basically, you can imagine that if you have 10 to the 93 grams per centimeter cube of energy in a centimeter cube of space, if you increase the coherency just a little bit and you start to extract 1/1000000000 of a 1% of what's there, you're like in one crystal, you have enough energy to run a whole city, right? Like it's, for thousands of years, right? This is just like a simple proof of principle, but it can be, brought to the next level. And some inventors throughout history have done it, starting with Tesla and others. It has been done,
but it's been buried, maybe. So and there's like evidence even of things like the Great Pyramids and potentially ancient alien technology having been on the planet that likely was using similar principles, and yet we've lost we've lost connection with that. Almost been held back in our societal evolution because we've become disconnected from these technologies that have been available. So you're bringing it back, and you've got this new energy technology that will help build, the future. And coherence is a key part of that, which I love, and this concept of coherence, we have to also create that inside ourselves,
right.
in our relationships, in our homes, in our society. It's more harmonious, it's more aligned, it's more focused. And we're talking about this in so many ways. It's key.
I like the fact that you talked about ancient civilization, because, in all of them that I've studied, none of them say we came up with this on our own, their knowledge. They all say they had contact with very advanced beings that traveled in the universe on flying boats, and things like that. I mean, it's all in there. Okay. I'm not going to say yeah or nay, but I'm just saying, not only is it in their tradition, but, it's clear. So I want to say this scalar component to the electromagnetic field, when you write the math for it, it actually turns out to be directly related to gravitational waves. So so there's a relationship between the two. And, and so in ancient civilization, you don't just have people talking, you have remaining evidence of some kind of remarkable technology that left, immense building on our planet that are not reproducible today. And I don't care how many archaeologists tell you that the pyramids were built with slaves pulling on vine ropes and floating them on the Nile. It really didn't happen that way, because it's physically impossible. It's just physically impossible with copper tools, not even the wheel, never mind cranes today, that we could produce this. We don't move 1,000-ton blocks. We don't build with 200-ton blocks. We don't do that because it's not practical. So
so they had to have some kind of maybe gravity control, levitation ability to move these blocks into perfect position even. I mean, these were massive stone, multi-ton things, and they're lock and key perfection. So they had to be levitating.
It's not only the mass of material that was moved, it's the fact that when it was either supposedly carved, because it's unclear, some of these statues in diorite, which is almost as hard as diamond, are perfect. It's you need CNC today, computer controlled technology to cut a face so that it's exactly symmetric, and
with a laser, right?
Right, or laser, whatever. But some dude with copper tools, no way, and so, so the precision is one thing, but then when they put the stuff together, the final precision is insane. It's insane. The orientation of some of the pyramids to north, is beyond what we can produce today. Even telescope don't have their building aligned that precisely, right? So that just doesn't happen with 100,000 slaves pulling on vine ropes. It just doesn't. And now they've been upgraded to farmers, because I guess there was not enough, and so they were doing that when the Nile was flooding and they had nothing else to do. Then let's go and build a pyramid.
It's
right?
the more politically correct narrative for today.
Right, exactly.
Farmers.
Yeah. So, I don't know, but I and if there was only one example, Theresa, right? But there's thousands and thousands of examples all around the world.
And now, let's enjoy this short consciousness break featuring the amazing research of Nassim Haramein and the Resonance Science Foundation.
And my husband and I, we visited your labs in 2021, I think, just, a year or two ago. And you showed us some artifacts that you've even been gifted from people like in the Yucatan and Mayan stuff and, around the world. And they looked like they were ancient artifacts, but they looked like aliens. They were just like, they were not of this world. So you've had firsthand, you've got your hands on these things. And what do you have to say about?
I did my science on it, tried to they were gifted to me so I could evaluate if they were fakes or whatever. And, preliminary results are not showing anything else than 7,000 to 8,000 years old. I've got one that's at 15,400 years old.
Wow.
And it's not carbon dating on that one. It's thermoluminescence dating, and because it's pottery, and so I mean those are reliable, somewhat, and even if it's off by 1,000 years, that makes it 14,000 years old.
So do you think these are of human origin or of extraterrestrial origin, or what do you sort of, what's your best
guess? As the result of all the studies I did in anthropology and in archaeology, my conclusion is that this world, this Earth of ours, has seen multiple evolutions. And there was an earlier evolution that's described all around the world by these ancient culture that was destroyed by a very large cataclysm,
like the flood,
or at least partly destroyed. Yeah. And there's more and more evidence for it. It's just overwhelming. And so there's buildings we're finding, like in Turkey and so on, where you have huge stones making temples, temples that are 13,000 years old, like when we were supposed to be in caves running around, like hunting and gathering and stuff. Like, there's no way we were moving 200-ton blocks, And so there's so much evidence supporting the idea that there was an earlier civilization, that this earlier civilization left vestiges of their existence on our planet, and that the later civilizations that had almost gone back to caveman status because of the cataclysm, basically came upon these amazing buildings. You see, for instance, in Egypt, there is nowhere in all of the writing of Egypt, like thousands and thousands and thousands of walls in Egypt, with all the details, like how they made food, how they did everything, like including intimate details, how they went to the toilet, how they made love, how they, everything. There's nowhere where it says, oh, and by the way, we built the pyramids or we built the temples on our off time, right? There's nowhere it says that. There's no inscription where they shown building the thing or anything. And so, but you see many saying that the sun god, brought this to humans, and that it come from an earlier time, and that, there was people from the stars that were in contact with them.
Well, and even some of the older temples don't even have hieroglyphs on them. They're bare walls, and yet they're the large stones that fit perfectly lock and key, and they were buried under the sands and only rediscovered later, as they were building new sites on top of those old sites. And one of them, for example, is the Osirian temple, where there is the one thing that is actually inscribed upon those old stone, massive stone blocks, is the flower of life.
Exactly.
Which kind of brings us back to your vacuum energy, quantum fluctuations. And, you have a thing where a 64 tetrahedron grid structure, right? Where you brought your crystals together into one. Do you have that here to share with us?
I do. I have one right here. Let me just pull it up. It's right here behind me. There we go.
Wow. So can you describe it for us?
Yeah, so if you put a sphere around each tetrahedron, you get the flower of life that's found in the Osirian temple that you were describing. And you can see it's 64 tetrahedrons. It makes octahedron cavities in between them. And in here, there are all these little crystals we saw earlier put together. And so they create a larger field of coherence. And that helps me think, that's
keeps your mind coherent, because you're so multidimensional, Nassim. You could probably go in many directions all at once.
Yeah. Giving me the equations from another dimension, right? And so this geometry is found in many different cultures. For instance, the I Ching is like 64 symbols, a broken stick and
the hexagrams.
Stick. Right? Yep. If you put the broken stick and the full stick together in the proper way, you end up building this in 3 dimensions, and all this and so on. So there's many places you find it. And so, when this is activated properly, it's going to be the core of your spaceship. But, this is so really, what you were saying as well about the temples that had nothing on them. There's an error that's done in archaeology all the time. And I'm going to Egypt at the beginning of next month with a group of people. So we're going to see this. It's super fun, right?
Exciting.
To go and actually see it in your own eyes and get the immensity of what was built, right? Yeah. But there's something I always make fun of, because you gotta make fun a little bit, right? But
For sure.
I went to the Louvre with my kids, for instance, and looked at the Egyptian collection. Or when you go to Egypt, you go to the museum there, and you see these incredible diorite, right, is like a granite, very hard granite, black granite, either boxes or statues, and they're associated in modern archaeology with Khufu, or a lot of them Ramses II. Seems like Ramses II built everything in Egypt, and and we know for a fact that these kings had big egos, and they loved to put their name on everything, right? They would just find stuff and put their name on it, right? Now, their statue is there. It's incredible. It's beautiful. It's super soft, roughness is it's insane. It's just, you look at it, it's insane. You're like, how can you do this, right? And then you look at the inscription on it, and you can tell it's this guy going tick, 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 trying to make a mark in it, and it's all crooked and it's all nasty, and it's like, and then the archaeologist goes, "Oh, this says Ramses II. Oh, this is Ramses II. This is the statue of Ramses II." It's like, no.
Maybe more like the ancient version of graffiti.
Right.
Like a graffiti tagger trying to put their signature on something that was far older and grander and beautiful.
Exactly. You see that in the Rencesium at Saqqara, where you have these huge box, like 200-ton box, of black granite, and they're perfect, and they're in niches, and the angles are like exact, like this. How do you do that? It's completely insane. And then you see writing on them, and you look closely at the writing, and it's all like, you can see it's like chicken scratch. And it's like, no, the guy that wrote this is not the guy that built the box. Mm-hmm. It just isn't. Mm-hmm. And so there's this confusion. It's the same thing. Like, when you find a pyramid, you can't carbon date it. So, because stone doesn't have organic carbon. So you can't. So what do? You carbon date the guy that died beside it, and you go, "Oh, that's the guy that built it." Okay.
But this is where you have some other theories about, like the Sphinx, for example. Rather than dating it by carbon dating, it was dated by weather erosion and shown to be much, much, much older than, what the standard narrative says today.
Yeah, exactly. And now there's new theories that the Nile flooded the Sphinx, and that's why there was water erosion on it. But that actually doesn't work neither. And it's just remarkable, because they did the flooding of the Nile theory so that they could transport the stones to, from Aswan, which is hundreds of miles away, to the pyramids, right? Because they needed granite, because you find it in the pyramids and you know where it came from. And it's, but like, wait a minute, excuse me, but I'd like to see you take an ancient barge and roll a 200-ton block on it and float it. Good luck.
And not sink your barge.
Right. Not sink your barge. Never mind that you cannot pick it because you don't have a crane, right? So you don't even have the wheel, right? So you gotta like somehow, so you gotta put it on it. So, and then not sink your barge, and, and anyway, so, there's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's not just a transportation issue. It's the precision, and then it's the stacking, when you're stacking at 300 feet of altitude, you got to bring that block up there, right?
Yeah. So clearly there's a lot of evidence that at one point on the planet, there was either ancient aliens or ancient advanced civilization, like some may talk about Atlantis, for example, pre-flood, and then we had cataclysms, ice age, floods, earth changes, things like this, which then set humanity back. And we're trying, from our narratives today, trying to figure out, some narrative that maybe fits based on our paradigm of the past being primitive, rather than accepting that the past actually was advanced. and then somehow we maybe lost touch with those advanced technologies, but now we're rediscovering them. And I think the work that you're doing is really helping bring a whole new technology that is, instead of having to, again, draw our energy from external resources and use that to power civilization, we're going to be able to get it straight out of the quantum field. And, we can bring them into our own homes, into our own lives, and use that, energy also for our own life enhancement. And I think this is a key in general for the energy of the future. The technology of the future should all be life enhancing rather than creating cancers because of, exposures to incoherent fields and so forth. We need more coherence. And as we make that leap in consciousness, we're going to recognize that we are not separate from our environment or our technologies or our, ways in which we're applying, even if it's on the other side of the world, it affects all of us and it affects out into the cosmos. And so everything is interconnected. And this is one of the big new shifts that we need to make into that new paradigm. So Nassim, we've been going for almost 3 hours here. It's been such a fascinating conversation, and I absolutely have enjoyed every moment of it. And we could go on and on. So I'm going to have you back at some point on Quantum Minds
Yes.
TV to go into some of these other conversations that we had planned. But do you want to leave the audience with any final words of advice about what we need to do to make that shift in collective consciousness and create a better world?
Well, Theresa, it's all about self-discovery, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, when you ask, like, what can I do? Well, okay, you can do a lot of things, but it starts with, self-discovery, looking deep inside yourself and realizing that you're plugged in to an infinite source of energy, like that you're plugged into to the fundamental structure of the universe, that you're connected, yet you're not isolated. You're not a fluke of some random function, but that actually you're part of this amazing thing, and that you have a role to play, that you have a mission, you have something to contribute, and that it's meaningful. It has meaning, like you giving your piece in the world is part of everything that needs to be there for us to transcend, and that it's meaningful. And I know, like you were saying, that like when times are tough and like, we get myopic and we all do it. And it's just that, like, if you can just take a minute in your day, let's say 5 minutes in your day, at any point in the day, to like kind of shut off the outside and go inside your experience, whichever way you do it, like, can be meditation, yoga, whatever, like, could, some are not moving, some may be moving, might be climbing. For me, it's solo climbing, for instance. When I solo climb, for instance, I'm very internally based, right? I'm actually not paying very much attention to what's happening outside. But so basically, like, it's really kind of like a way of like building, like discovering yourself at the deepest level, and puiser, in French is puiser, in English it would be like tapping into your fundamental energy, your origin, your source, and then moving in the world from there. And any time in the world where it gets like nasty and problematic for you, like, take that perspective, stop, take that perspective, like, go vertical, like, get your nose out of the rug and look out out far, and then maybe you'll see the pattern. You'll see, okay, this is nasty, or this is not nice what's happening right now, but like, it's part of the tapestry, and like, how can I make that a positive? And so, doing that in your life continuously. And we're all, have moments where that's not happening. We're like completely, but it's not about the moments where you're not succeeding. It's about how many moments you're succeeding in creating that coherency, in creating that field in your life, and in being able to be of service for the collective, for the whole. And then and then when you do that, then help us, help us contribute what you can to the cause, whatever you can, and, and educate yourself and learn, and come up with new stuff and publish it and tell the world, and, and then we will leave a better world for the generations to come.
Amen. I love how you're saying it. It's very much about not the moments that we aren't in coherence, but the moments that we are in coherence, and just continuing to access those coherent moments and bring ourselves to this place. The more we work on tapping into that, the more we'll find that we can prolong our ability to hold and sustain that. And then that will ultimately become our new foundation for life. And then as we step into service as well and help others, and then maybe step into a place where we're collaborating with others who are also on that mission, we create this resonant and amplified effect that we can accomplish far more working together than we can alone. And I personally will look forward to more collaboration with you, Nassim. I want to thank you for being a guest. Yeah. And now, for those of you who'd like to learn more about Nassim Haramein's unified physics theories, his work, he also has an online learning platform called Resonance Academy and is educating thousands of students from more than 80 countries on his platform. And since about April 2020, which I believe coincided with the pandemic time, he made his unified science course available to the public for free in English, French, and Spanish, with more languages on the way. The Academy also offers lots of electives and science news, research articles, and media. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. And that brings us to the end of this conscious conversation with Nassim Haramein. Nassim, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a stimulating conversation, and I would love to have you back again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great. And please continue this great adventure you're on, and helping us connect all the dots. It's wonderful. You have an amazing mind.
Thank you. As do you, Nassim. Well, we hope you took some golden nuggets out of this fascinating and vast conversation that we've had here with Nassim Haramein. And most importantly, that you'll find some ways to take the knowledge and the concepts and the possibilities that were gathered here today and shared with you, and that you'll put them into application in your life, because that is where you're going to get the full benefits of what has been shared here today. Now, as always, I want to thank you for tuning in to Quantum Minds TV. And if you enjoyed it, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and or Spotify. And if you'd like to be the first to get full access to each conscious conversation as soon as it becomes available, then you can register at quantummindstv.com with your name and email. It's completely free to register. And when you do, you'll be provided with a secret link where you can log in to access every full conversation that I've had with my guests as soon as they become available. And then you'll be able to review them at your leisure when you register. Until next time, I'm Dr. Theresa Bullard, and this is Quantum Minds TV.
This conscious conversation was created, produced, and recorded by Dr. Theresa Bullard in collaboration with Nassim Haramein, and edited by Verse Content and HH Films and Photo. The theme music and intro videography were created by Tim Mountain of Even Load Productions. Quantum Minds TV is a product of the Quantum Learning Academy.